3 fingers, gone in an instant. But Harold Lloyd smiled for the cameras anyway, dangling from a clock 10 stories above the street with only one real hand gripping the ledge. For decades, Hollywood's biggest stars hid injuries that would end most careers. From shattered faces to prosthetic teeth, from war wounds to studio-inflicted damage, these icons performed through agony, while millions watched, never knowing the truth. Clark Gable. By his early 30s, Hollywood's most famous leading man couldn't chew his own food. Gable's rugged jawline and devilish grin defined masculinity on screen, but behind that smile was nothing but porcelain and pain. Severe gum disease had stripped him of every natural tooth, leaving him dependent on ill-fitting dentures that caused constant ulcers and infections. The dentures created a slight whistle during dialogue. Directors began using stand-ins for close-ups, worried audiences might notice. Joan Crawford reportedly needed peppermint oil before kissing scenes because of the chronic bad breath from infections festering beneath the false teeth. Vivien Leigh wrote that kissing Gable felt like pressing against a hot stove, but Gable never flinched on camera. Even as nerve pain shot through his jaw, he stopped eating in public, covered his mouth when he laughed. At night, the king of Hollywood would soak his teeth in a glass, terrified someone might discover his secret. The studio had built an empire on his masculine image. One slip, one photo of him without those teeth, and it could all vanish. So he suffered. And Hollywood let him, because the illusion was worth more than the man. Harold Lloyd, August 1919. A photographer's studio. What was supposed to be a harmless prop bomb exploded in Harold Lloyd's hand, tearing away his thumb and index finger, nearly blinding him. Newspapers reported a full recovery. They lied. 4 years later, Lloyd dangled from that famous clock in safety last, gripping the ledge with what audiences thought was superhuman strength. They had no idea he was doing it with one functional hand and a stiff rubber prosthetic glove hiding his missing fingers. The glove was sweaty, painful, limited his grip. Each climb, each stunt was a negotiation with gravity that could end in death. Studios quietly suggested he move to directing. Lloyd saw it as exile. So instead he doubled down on danger, choreographing stunts more elaborate than before. Insurance companies refused to cover him. His contracts banned photographers from capturing his hand without the glove. He became a master illusionist, using body doubles and clever blocking to protect the secret. The glove chafed his skin raw. Infections became routine. His hand would swell during shoots, but he never complained because complaining meant acknowledging the disability, and acknowledgement meant the end. Harold Lloyd didn't just climb buildings on screen. He climbed every day to stay visible in an industry that had no room for broken parts. Montgomery Clift. May 1956. Leaving Elizabeth Taylor's dinner party, Clift's car slammed into a telephone pole. His face shattered, cheekbone crushed, jaw wired shut, nose destroyed. When surgeons finished reconstructing him with metal plates, the symmetry was gone. One cheek drooped, his smile stiffened. Those expressive eyes seemed dulled by trauma. The studios tried to pretend nothing changed. They lit him from the left, used soft focus, leaned on Taylor's star power to carry him through Raintree County. But everyone knew, the face that made him Hollywood's golden boy was now a reconstruction, held together by surgical wire and willpower. Eating became torture, smiling exhausting. Clift retreated inward, haunted by the reflection that no longer matched the man he remembered. Some said he became erratic, others said he couldn't stay sober. Maybe he was just trying to numb the constant ache of a body that no longer felt like home. He kept working for another decade, but the peak had passed. Directors still respected his talent, but Hollywood had moved on from the beautiful young actor who pioneered method acting. Montgomery Clift's face was rebuilt, but his spirit never recovered. And in that quiet unraveling, he became something rarer than a movie star. A symbol of what it costs when beauty becomes currency and an accident steals your fortune. Judy Garland, 16 years old, ruby slippers, one perfect voice, and legs that didn't match. Judy Garland's right leg was shorter than her left, a condition the studio never disclosed. To hide the imbalance, MGM fitted her with custom orthopedic shoes hidden inside those famous ruby slippers. Every skip down the yellow brick road came with a twinge of pain disguised by sequins. But the shoes were just the beginning. Studio doctors monitored her weight with brutal precision, prescribing what they called vitamin injections. Speed to keep her thin and energized. Sleeping pills to knock her out between shoots. At 16, Garland was making grown men weep, while studio notes called her the fat one and not photogenic. The leg imbalance led to chronic back pain. Her spine curved from the pressure, but rest wasn't an option when you're a contract star, owned by MGM like equipment. She was ridiculed for her posture. humiliated for her weight, worked through exhaustion and aching joints that screamed for relief. And still she danced. Still sang in perfect pitch even when her back throbbed through every note. Still smiled bright enough to light theaters even as the scaffolding holding her up began to crack. Judy Garland didn't just perform through pain. She was sculpted by it, shaped into something sparkly and consumable while the world adored the shimmer and ignored the cost. Bela Lugosi, that iconic stare, that slow deliberate walk, that stiff posture that made Dracula so unnaturally menacing. Audiences thought it was brilliant performance. In truth, Lugosi's body gave him no choice. World War I left him with shrapnel embedded in his lower back and legs. By the time he reached Hollywood, the pain was electric, constant, unforgiving. He walked stiff-legged because bending sent shocks through his spine. Dracula didn't walk like other men because Lugosi physically couldn't. The hypnotic stare had another secret: severe nearsightedness. Without his thick glasses, which he couldn't wear on camera, Lugosi could barely see past a few feet. Every penetrating glance was actually a man straining to focus through fog. It added otherworldly menace. Universal ate it up. Behind the scenes, he walked into set pieces, tripped over cables. Crew whispered he was clumsy. As the pain worsened, so did his need for relief. Not for pleasure, just to function. To get through another day of standing when sitting felt impossible. His hands gripped furniture between takes, his face pale, waiting for the next cue. Assistants rushed to help him to a chair the moment directors yelled cut. The studio let it happen. His suffering gave Dracula an eerie stiffness. His injuries added authenticity they never could have scripted. They loved him when he was in character. But when the cape came off and the man beneath it needed help, Hollywood only had silence to offer. Katharine Hepburn. Her head shook. Her hands trembled. By her early 30s, Katharine Hepburn had developed an essential tremor that caused involuntary movement. In an era that demanded stillness and poise, there was no room for visible fragility. MGM executives whispered she was unstable, nervous, too dramatic. So Hepburn adapted with genius. She developed a rapid, clipped speaking pattern that masked the head tremors, turning a neurological symptom into her signature cadence. High-necked blouses and silk scarves hid the shaking. Pockets stitched into every costume concealed her hands. Everything iconic about her style had purpose behind it. Directors learned to shoot around her condition. Longer takes, smoother pans, blocking that kept her in motion because stillness revealed too much. She declined dinners, avoided social events. Some thought her aloof. She was strategic, protecting an image that could crumble if the tremor showed too clearly. When she fought for better roles, studio heads used her condition as quiet leverage, threatening to expose what she worked so hard to hide. Eventually, she stepped away for 5 years, not because her talent faded, because the mask grew too heavy. But when she returned, she commanded the screen like royalty, winning 4 Academy Awards across her career. Katharine Hepburn didn't just survive Hollywood, she outsmarted it. What others called a flaw, she weaponized into signature style. The tremor that should have ended her career became the rhythm that defined a legend. Lionel Barrymore. First came the braces, metal and leather contraptions hidden beneath his wardrobe, crushing into his skin as severe arthritis twisted his joints. Lionel Barrymore, from a dynasty of performers, stood on camera through agony that ground bone against bone. A fractured hip that never healed properly made walking impossible, but MGM needed him working. He'd collapse in his dressing room between takes but never complained. Complaining meant replacement, so he stood with false strength until finally his body refused. The wheelchair rolled in, and with it, a compromise. MGM would let him continue, but only if the chair could be written into roles or hidden completely. Suddenly, every character sat. Judges, bankers, villains, always seated. Audiences saw a heartless miser confined to a chair, unaware the actor was confined by something crueler. A system that only acknowledged disability when it had no choice, then slashed his salary and blamed exhaustion instead of the degenerative condition stealing his mornings and haunting his nights. Barrymore was the first major star Hollywood couldn't stand up anymore. But instead of fading, he stayed seated and stole every scene, quietly redefining what strength could look like when you've got nothing left but talent and refusal to disappear. James Stewart, stepping off a B-24 bomber decorated as a war hero. 20 combat missions over Nazi-occupied Europe, flak that tore through his squadron like paper. He came back thinner, quieter, with a subtle drag in his right leg from nerve damage. His boyish stride from Mr. Smith Goes to Washington was gone, replaced by guarded stiffness. Hollywood panicked. MGM executives told his agent flatly, "We can't market damaged goods." The limp became forbidden. Public appearances, camera angles, everything choreographed so he was seated, leaning, or moving through shadow, never standing still where viewers might notice. Behind closed doors, trainers drilled him relentlessly, not to heal, to mask. They tried to retrain his walk into something palatable for audiences. One executive allegedly said, "The American public can handle a soldier. They just can't handle a wounded one." He was one of the few who didn't just act patriotism, he lived it. But the cost of service lingered in every scene. When he returned to screen in It's a Wonderful Life, the weariness wasn't performance. It was bone-deep exhaustion from seeing too much, losing too many, then being asked to smile anyway. That barely noticeable limp became a daily reminder of what Hollywood refused to accept. Even heroes break, and even bravery needed polishing before it could be packaged for profit. Judy Garland, Part 2. The pills never stopped. What started as studio-mandated speed and sleeping pills at 16 became a 40-year battle with substances meant to control her body, then her mind, then just to keep her standing. By 1969, Garland's voice had failed. Her body, ravaged by hepatitis and years of addiction, was failing too. She took the stage in London for what would be her final performances. Critics weren't kind. They painted harsh portraits of a woman who looked decades older than 47, whose hands shook, whose voice cracked. But she kept performing because performing was all she knew. The stage was the one place she'd ever felt truly whole. Her daughter Liza later said it wasn't an OD that took her. She just got tired. She let her guard down. After a lifetime of fighting, of being pushed and pulled and remade into whatever the industry needed, Garland simply stopped. June 20, found in a London bathroom, 47 years old. The tragedy wasn't just her death. It was that every warning sign had been visible for 30 years. The breakdowns, the exhaustion, the desperation in her eyes during later performances. Hollywood saw it all and kept taking until there was nothing left to give. Montgomery Clift, Part 2. After the crash, Clift made 3 more significant films. The Misfits, where he worked alongside Clark Gable and Marilyn Monroe, all 3 giving their final great performances. The set felt like a gathering of beautiful ghosts, each one carrying invisible wounds. Gable would be dead from a heart attack months after filming wrapped. Monroe would be gone within a year from an OD. Clift lasted until 1966, dying alone in his New York apartment at 45 from a heart attack, though many believe the crash had been killing him slowly for a decade. What connected all these stars wasn't just hidden injuries. It was a system that demanded perfection, then discarded anyone who couldn't maintain the illusion. They gave everything to be remembered, only to be forgotten for what made them human. Garland's pills, Lugosi's pain, Hepburn's tremor, Barrymore's wheelchair, Clift's shattered face, each one a story of survival, each one a reminder that the golden age wasn't gold for everyone holding up its weight. They smiled through agony, performed through injuries that would sideline anyone else, hid their pain so well that generations never knew the cost of their favorite films. These weren't just actors, they were endurance athletes in an industry that measured value in box office returns and threw away anyone who couldn't keep pace. Their legacies aren't diminished by these truths. They're deepened, because now we see the full picture. Not just the magic on screen, but the courage it took to create that magic while fighting battles no camera ever captured. If these stories moved you, don't let them fade again. Like this video, share your thoughts below, and subscribe to keep these forgotten truths alive.